Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you so much for joining me again today. And again, I can't say it enough. I am blessed to have friends who will take their time to come on my podcast, even when they have their own podcast to do. And that is the case with my friend Darrell Amy. He's the author of The Revenue Growth Engine, How to Align Sales and Marketing to Accelerate Growth. And you can find his content at revenuegrowthengine.net. He's also the co-host of the Selling from the Heart podcast with Larry Levine. But don't tell Larry, I'd rather talk to Darrell. Darrell Amy joins me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Hey,
Darrell,
Brian,
how are you doing today, man?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me today. I'm so excited to be a part of the podcast. I'm a huge fan of the vision of what you're doing, and so I'm thrilled to be here.
Don't get too excited. It's
No, I love it. You know, one of my core values, and I'm a marketing nerd, so most things in my life, I know they're in line if they all start with the same letter. But one of my core values starts with the letter I, like the rest of them, and it's to be intentional. And I love the vision of what you're doing to say, I want to be intentionally encouraging in a world where, my goodness, we could use some encouragement. So the honor is mine. I'm thrilled to be here, Brian.
So let me start there, Darrell. What does intentional mean to you? Because a lot of people would say, well, why would you use intent? Or why would, or we talk about maybe the word intent has a negative connotation, like criminal intent or something like
Right.
that. Yeah. So what does intentional mean to you?
Well, look, I think the default for all of us is just to kind of coast through life and go from, meeting to meeting, event to event, whatever, and person to person, and get to the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, and maybe the end of your life, and go, what was that all about? What was I doing? And so for me, I tend to live in the world of ideas. So I get pulled down into all of that. But what I've got to remember is the interactions that I have with people, the interactions I have in the organizations that I lead. It's going to be a whole lot better if I walk in with some intention behind it. And I think that applies to not only an engagement with, working with a person or working with an organization, but I think it applies to your life overall. So, what is the intention of your life, my life? And so I think the word's fantastic. I hadn't thought about having criminal intent, but I think, so I'm assuming there's a good in front of the intentional side of this. But, Brian, the days and the weeks that I look at in my life where I've approached things with intention, they're totally different than the other ones where I'm just kind of cruising along, or in more cases than not, just kind of being dragged along by the rapid river of life. So yeah, it's intentional is huge. It's a huge word for me. And that's why when I saw the title of the podcast, I was like, I'm there. That's awesome.
Well, and the people either go in a straight line, like some people know early in life what they want to do. I know people that said, I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was 5. I wasn't that fortunate because my path took twists and turns to get to sales and doing some other things. I started out wanting to be a play-by-play guy for a professional sports team. I ended up in sales.
Right.
When you talked about being a marketing nerd, was that something that was always kind of hardwired into your brain, or were like so many other people, you just kind of got there through a different path?
Wow. It's so funny when yes and no. I mean, yes and no. I think two things happened. First of all, when I was younger, I've always loved business. And I remember when I was young, I grew up in a family, we did construction. So my hobby, by the way, on the weekend, I'm out in my shop. In the evening, I'm in my shop building something. It's very therapeutic to me. So anyhow, when I was a teenager, I remember my parents went away on a trip, and I thought that I would do something for their 25th anniversary or something like that. It was something special. So I built them this piece of outdoor furniture. More than anything, it was probably just bored, and it was a farm kid. So, and so I built this piece of furniture, and someone's driving by, and they saw me building this piece of furniture. It was almost finished, and they said, "How much is that?" And I didn't have a category for this.
Now, full disclosure, folks, Darrell Amy is not Amish. He is not Amish.
No, but full disclosure, Brian, I actually lived across the road from an Amish family. So it is true.
Oh, God.
And I do have a black T-shirt on. Yeah. But
where's your beard and no mustache, dude?
I've tried so hard. This is all I can do. This is after 2.5 months being at home.
So the creative side, when you were younger, and you're out there in the shop building something, and I'm fascinated by people that have that talent and ability. Were you always just thinking about what can I take this piece of wood or these pieces of wood and turn it into, or did you know in your mind, I'm going to go point A, point B, point C, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to be specific and intentional and build this?
Well, let me say I'm not very good at following directions. I never really have been, but I enjoy building things. And I think, I think that's one of the things that led me into sales and marketing. When that person drove away and handed me $150 for that bench that I was going to build for my parents. And I quickly learned that I like business. I like selling things. This is good. So moving on through college, I ended up going through business school and had a marketing degree in my hip pocket. And what I've loved in my career has been sales, and then starting a marketing agency, doing sales training, and now with Revenue Growth Engine, working with organizations, helping them grow revenue so they can be intentional and make an impact, which we'll talk about. But with all of that, what I've really enjoyed is just the building component of it, because you're building a company, you're building a client base, you're building a marketing strategy and system, and all of it is cool, because I learned real quickly when I was young that if I could build something and sell it, it would generate revenue, which was really good. And so all through my career, I've been involved in building things and that generate revenue. And to me, that's fun, because you can do something. There's very rarely a step-by-step guide in terms of how to get from here to there, as you know, from being in sales.
Yep.
And anyone that's run a company or started a company knows. However, when you do begin with the vision, the end in mind of what you want to create, at least you've got something that's guiding you as you're moving towards it. So, which goes back to the word intention, right?
Yeah.
What's your intention? And, and so I love that. I get to talk to people about their goals and visions and dreams all the time, Brian. And it's a huge joy in all of that.
Darrell, a lot of people don't love the process of building, right? Because I have an almost 20-year-old son. This generation, and I don't want to sound like in my day we didn't have, but this generation seems like they want to go from 0 to 60 in 1 second. If they can't plug in a video game that they just bought at GameStop or downloaded from the PlayStation Store and aren't instantly good at it, they become annoyed, frustrated, things like that. For you, do you still enjoy the building part of helping companies get to point A to point B? Is it still as fun for you because building is hard. Building a territory is hard. Building a company is hard. Building anything is hard. Do you still enjoy the building part of it?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And what's interesting, I hear what you're saying about the current generation, but let me put a positive spin on that. The reality is, the tools exist right now to be able to build things much faster than you could 20 years ago.
That's a great point, Darrell.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you can spin up a company, and you can, launch a podcast. You can write a book. I was reflecting on that.
You can do everything right here. You can build a company right here. You can write a book right here.
So it is really interesting. I've got a couple daughters that are in their late 20s, early 30s, have a 15-year-old son. And I look at the world that my boy's going into, because he's getting to 11th grade. And, I'm starting to get into that season of getting in your feels.
Now, hold up a minute. You've got
Yes.
a daughter in her early 30s. What did you do? Did you take that $150 from making a bench and go get married?
I actually have 3 grandkids and one on the way, Brian.
Good night, dude. Good night. I thought, well, of course, my wife, we were Abraham and Sarah. We had children in our old age. She was 30 and I was 28 when our son was born. I thought, oh my gosh, we're not robbing the cradle. We're stealing from the old folks' home here to go have kids.
But it's funny when you look at the world. I look at the world that my boy is being born into. He's in halfway through high school, so I was saying I'm starting to get my feels about him going off to college. But I'm realizing that the world of opportunity that is open before him.
Yeah.
And yeah, there may be some unrealistic expectations, but if I'm honest, I think I had some pretty unrealistic expectations when I was in business school and thought I would be the CEO of a Fortune 1000 company, by the time I was 23. So at least that's what they told me in business school.
Yeah, really.
So, but you can spin something up. And this is what I love about our world right now. If you have a passion, a vision, a dream, a cause, this podcast is a great example, right? I mean, you said, I want to encourage people. So you started a podcast. I mean, and that took really just a little bit more than a thought and a goal. And next thing you know, and a microphone and you're on the air.
Well, there was some begging, some pleading, some groveling, from friends of mine to go, please, would you please come on my podcast? And my wife going, what's this on the credit card bill? What's that on the credit card bill? No, but you're exactly right. So
really a cool time.
Yeah. So let me just piggyback off of that real quick and go there for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk with folks that say, Darrell, I have a company and we did $100,000 in revenue, and our goal is we want to get to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to companies like that, are there ever times where you have to kind of slow the roll and say, hey, look, you guys want to go from 0 to 60 like we talked about a few minutes ago. You want to go from 0 to 60 in a second. It takes time to get there. Do you ever have to pump the brakes on clients and go, let's take a logical, purposeful approach of how you want to get there and why you want to get there?
The short answer is yes. Although it's interesting, Brian, when we go in, and one of the things that I do is I lead revenue growth strategy workshops at companies. So we'll go in, and by go in, I mean get on Zoom, and we will
I like
build,
where your head's at.
Yeah, exactly. It's the world of online, but we will work with the management team and help them develop a growth strategy and a plan to drive net new business and cross-sell more to their current clients. And so what I've found when it comes to business goals, they're usually either wildly unrealistic or they're wildly selling themselves short, because the way that a lot of companies, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, set goals, they use one of two ways. The first way is the spaghetti method, and you boil a big thing of spaghetti and you throw it on the wall and you see what sticks. And, we kind of chuckle at that, but you'd be shocked at the number of businesses I've been in, and they were like, well, we really didn't know what to do, so we threw spaghetti on the wall. And so the other way a lot of businesses set goals is what I call the ruler method. They look at last year and they go, here's the trend. We've been growing 7% year over year. So this year our goal is 7%. Well, the spaghetti method is ridiculous, obviously, but so is the ruler method. And the ruler method is actually a problem right now, because the ruler, after this little economic crisis that we've entered, is now pointing downwards and instead of upwards. So what I think with businesses, when it comes to setting goals, the thing to do is to take a look down at the client level. So we encourage businesses to We help them define a profile of an ideal client. We help them establish the 10-year value of the client. And then we say, okay, how many, let's make a plan for how many of these clients we can attract per year. And then we do some math. And when you do the math backwards that way, it's rooted in reality, but it also usually ends up being, we call them aggressive but realistic goals, because the goals usually end up being, wow, I didn't realize we could do that. So, notwithstanding the people that want to be Elon Musk in 36 months, the reality is most businesses have more growth potential than they think they do. And it's fun helping management teams unlock that potential.
Well, you have some people, or they go the other way, Darrell, or they say, we set a growth target of 15%, and we did the WAG estimate, the wild A guess estimate.
Right. Yeah.
And we said, oh man, we think we can grow 15%. And Darrell, here's the thing too. A lot of companies, and I saw this when I was in the restaurant business, people would go, well, I'm going to open up a pizza shop and I'm going to open the doors and I'm going to make all this money. And I'm like, well, what's your why? Well,
here we go.
Somebody told me you can make a crap ton of money in the pizza business. Did
Not
they tell
good.
you how hard it was going to be
Yeah.
in the pizza business? Did
Right.
they tell you that employees steal from time to time, and you have product loss, and you've got to keep customers happy, and you've got to find ways to keep people in the door? And so a lot of people, to your point, it's easy to open a business, but sometimes there are people that shouldn't be opening businesses because they fall into the trap of, I'm going to make money because of X, Y, or Z. When you run into those clients, how do you let them down gracefully and say, hey, let's readjust and let's reestablish our goals here? Because you can see that they're going down the path of failure. And if I were working alongside you, I might plug you and go, hey, Darrell, I might say, hey, Darrell and I need to step outside a minute. I got something I need to tell him. I might look at you and go, my God, man, these people are going to fail. So how do you set those realistic expectations, Darrell?
Well, Brian, first of all, I've been very fortunate in getting to work with fantastic companies. I get a little Simon Sinek on all of us for a moment. I mean, you do have to start with why. And my why in terms of what I do professionally is I want to help great companies grow revenue. And the reason for that is I sit on the board of several nonprofits, and I've noticed over the years that the real people, what moves the needle for a nonprofit in terms of finances is businesses. Successful business people are able to write the big checks. So my entire mission is to find great businesses and help them grow, and so that nonprofits are able to have the funding they need. In fact, my big, hairy, audacious goal as I launch Revenue Growth Engine this summer is to help 10,000 businesses double their revenue, 10,000 great businesses. And so, I don't get pulled into a lot of discussions with businesses that are purely just greedy, money hungry, profit driven. I kind of have made a choice that that's not my game anymore, that I want to work with great businesses. And so what I do find, though, is that what you're saying is absolutely true. When you know your why as an individual, and importantly, as a business.
Were you looking on my bookshelf? Were you looking on my bookshelf?
Everybody's got Start With Why on their bookshelf. It's a qualification. If you can't pull out your copy of Start With Why, I'm not sure if we can be friends. But
or Selling from the Heart.
Or Selling from the Heart. That works. But two very closely related concepts. So the idea is, Brian, I think that we look at the world right now. We're in this time where we're going to have to dig out of a hole really quickly and reset our futures. And so what I like about the reset, though, and I know a lot of your life or a lot of your podcasts, people are sharing stories about resets in their life, times when they were down and out and rose up, from the bottom. What's really and good things can happen great things can happen out of that. What I like about what's happening right now, I don't like the COVID crisis. I don't like the economic duress. But what I do like is it's a favorable moment in time right now where I'm seeing a lot of business people go, how are we going to do things now? Like, this has been a moment of pause. And I think in this moment, it's a great time to go back to your why, because you're going to need that level of motivation. You're going to need that level of purpose and passion to be able to bring your business back and grow it going forward. It's not going to be an easy task we face in the months and years ahead. However, the businesses that understand their why have the passion to be able to go in and I think really drive forward, maybe in some directions that they weren't going before, and ultimately to create something that's going to be better. And in my opinion, better is it creates more meaningful type jobs for people and creates resources that can go back into the community, into things that are meaningful, nonprofits, et cetera. So this is, as hard as this time is right now for everybody, this is a great time for a reset and to really consider intention. Like, what's my intention? What kind of impact do I want to have? And, and inside that, I encourage everybody right now. I encourage everyone to, take a pause and really reconnect with your why, your purpose.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Darrell, along those same lines, and you were talking about people hitting the reset, and yeah, that's been a common theme throughout these podcasts, and I don't apologize for that.
Mm-hmm.
Share with us the biggest obstacle that you overcame, either personally or professionally, what you did to get through that obstacle.
Wow. Well, so let's be personal on that, because those are the ones that really, I've had professional obstacles, but I think on the personal side, 10 years ago, I found myself divorced and single, and this was not like anyone. It was not on my radar. It was not planned. It was not something that I wanted, but all of a sudden, I found myself in my late 30s, single. And, in that whole season of life was a massive, massive reset for me, Brian. It was, anyone that's gone through that knows that those days were some really, really brutal days. And, the lessons and the character that was formed in that season, have really, it was a massive, it's so strange how something that tragic and that brutal happens, but I can look back now a decade later and see that there were so many good things that came out of that. And in so many ways, I'm a very different person today. And while I wouldn't have chosen that reset, and while I wouldn't wish that on anybody, what I realized was, that kind of stripping everything away. And of course, that all, if you following the calendar, that all happened during the last Great Recession. So at the same moment that my marriage was stripped away from me, my business was in kind of triage mode with some of our largest clients reorganizing and kind of hitting the pause button with us. So it was just that moment in life where everything that I valued, marriage, being successful in business, all of that just, collapsed within about a 90-day period. And, those are the moments those are the moments where you figure out who you really are. And, and I look back on that and, what got me through that, two things, relationship with God and close relationships with some friends that were here locally, the type of people that were in my life that were able to look me in the eye and go, hey, you're going to be okay. And we're going to get you through this. We're going to work through this together. And so, it is interesting when it all boils down to the most basics. It's those, it's that relational level. For me, it was a relationship with God and relationship with some really good friends that carried me through that season. And ultimately, I think, Brian, put me on a trajectory, which was a good trajectory instead of one that could have been very destructive.
Man, I've got to follow up there with this, Darrell. If you could go back 10 years ago, what would Darrell now say to Darrell back then?
Yeah, wow. That's a great question, because I think, those moments for me at the bottom were hopeless moments, right? All you can see, it's like if you're at the bottom of a well, all you can see is the walls and the darkness all around you. What an amazing thing it would have been if I was able to see 10 years ahead and how my life was going to be, and, how happy I would be and what kind of impact it'd be having and all of that, but you don't get that. You don't get that at the bottom of the well. So in fact, it's kind of tough, because I have a good friend who his name's Christian Grasso, and Chris was with me in that season. And I remember Chris came up to me one day, and I was working in Starbucks, and he popped in for a cup of coffee. He came up to me, looked me in the eye, and he said, "Darrell, you're going to be a better man on the other side of this season." And I remember thinking to myself, I've never punched anyone in the face before, but I think I'm about to punch Chris in the face.
Not Gian Grasso.
Oh yeah. So, but it's one of those things that, I needed to hear that, but I didn't want to hear it. And I didn't, I didn't, so it is tricky when you're at the bottom. You do need to hear a message of hope, but at the same time, sometimes those are really hard to hear. So, but thanks for asking. And the lessons out of that, I've carried forward. Relationship with God. Before that season, I really didn't have a whole lot of friends. I got a lot of friends now, because I realized how important that was to have those guys carry me through that season.
Darrell, my last question I've got for you. You've been so great with your time. This has been exactly what I wanted.
Awesome.
I want people to hear an Intentional Encourager podcast and feel like they've been a part, like they were sitting with us having this conversation. And it's been so good. We've laughed and we've had really a poignant moment. I want you to share with this audience your single biggest piece of intentional encouragement, whether it's a business that says, man, maybe there's a business owner out there and they go, I want to keep on, but man, COVID-19 has made it really hard. I don't know how we're going to get through it. Or maybe it's somebody that's a sales guy like yourself and going, man, my marriage is falling apart. What am I going to do? It could be anybody that's in this audience that is listening to this story and just connecting and resonating with it. Share with the audience your single biggest piece of intentional encouragement.
Wow. Yeah, Brian, there's so many different ways to go. And
did I just stump the band? Is that what I did?
No, you didn't stump the band. I just, it's one of those things where when you're at the bottom, and I'll laugh with Chris about Chris and all of that. And Chris and I are still great friends. And
yeah, he's a great guy.
Super. I know you've gotten to know Chris, and you should bring him on the Intentional Encourager podcast if you want to get encouraged.
Shameless plug. Yeah.
One of the most encouraging people I know, but to tell someone when they're really in a dark place that, oh, everything's going to be all right. The reason I believed Chris is Chris had gone through that valley and come out the other side. And so when he said that, I didn't punch him in the face. I believed him because I knew that he'd been on that journey before. And so maybe I'm going to answer the question a little differently. I would say if you've been in a valley and if you've come out the other side, be intentional in seeking out the people that are in the valley right now. So if you've had a business failure, you know, and if you've been through a tough season in business, then encourage people in that area. If, you know, if you've had a whatever it is, whatever thing that you've been in the valley and come out the other side, I really believe that, you know, it's been said that your mess is your message, you know, and that the things that you've gone through in your life, and come out the other side, it's almost like you have a calling, maybe even a responsibility back to the world to encourage people. So I would say, you know, if you've been in the valley and if you've come out the other side, I really want to encourage everyone listening to look back at their life and go, where am I called to encourage somebody else? Because I guarantee you, you know, you're as one of my pastors used to say, you're either in trouble, you're just getting out of trouble, or you're about to get in trouble. That's the way life works, right? Yeah, I mean, it's an up and down, and so we need other people. So be that person. You know, where are the areas in your life where you can be an intentional encourager to someone else, where you actually have the credibility to be encouraging in that area? And those are the areas where I think we can have the most impact.
Man, this has been so good, Darrell. I appreciate that. Tell folks where they can find your resources. I introduced it a little bit, but tell folks how they can connect with you if they want to connect with you after they hear this podcast, or find your resources, things like that. Now's your chance, my man, to shamelessly plug whatever you want to do.
Well, hey, there is no shameless plug here, but I would, if someone's listening to the Intentional Encourager podcast and is still listening through the end of this episode, I'd love to be your friend. So would love to connect. So you can find me on Twitter, Darrell_Amy. Not many people the last name Amy. Look me up on LinkedIn. Look me up on Facebook. All those channels, you can find me there. If you have a company and you want to grow your company, check out revenuegrowthengine.net. And if you are interested in making an impact in the world and seeing some of the coolest organizations that are changing changing places all over the world, go check out a nonprofit that I'm involved in called the Kingdom Fund at kingdomfund.com. So all kinds of cool stuff to talk about. Brian, it's been a true pleasure hanging out with you today. And once again, I love what you're doing here at the podcast and honored to be a part of it.
Well, thanks, Darrell. I really appreciate it. And listen, guys, if he'll be friends with me, he'll be friends with any of you. So don't worry about that. Darrell Amy, thank you, man. What a blast it's been. Thank you so much for being with us on the Intentional Encourager podcast. My thanks, as always, to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through His Word. And until next time, remember, everyone, everywhere, at any time, and any place, can be an intentional